Sometimes we're not fortunate enough to have a leg up when it comes to our financial education, and we get deeper into life before we start making good financial decisions. So today I want to take you through what I would do if I was starting from scratch in order to build a $1 million net worth or even a $500,000 net worth as quickly as possible. Now, the strategies are going to be things that I would do. You might not be interested in these, but they're also going to be things that require little to no luck. In other words, you don't have to get lucky and start a $1 million business, but they're just things that anyone can do regardless of who they are or where they are. So number one, if I started over, no house, no car, no job, I would keep my wife. I would start calling friends and family and seeing who we could stay with. Something that people forget is we build this social network over time. And when disaster strikes, we got to lean into that. So at one time, the United States was a nation of neighbors. Now that's not really the case as much, but hopefully you still have, whether that's your parents or friends that could help you for a week or two while you get back on your feet. Now, as I'm looking for a place to stay, I'm also applying for every possible job. So when we look at finances, we have our earned income and we have our passive income. Now, ideally, at some point, we'll have all this passive income. In reality, we have to start with active income, and we want to create margin. So we want to be boosting our income as high as possible in the beginning and pushing our expenses as low as possible. But what do I know? I know that I need a job. I know that I need a car, and I know that I need a place to stay. So if friends and family can take care of the place to stay, then if there's friends and family that can let you borrow a car for a few days, that's great. If that's not an option, then we're going to be going to the junkyard, finding the cheapest possible car and getting that. Now, ideally, we're not borrowing any money that we can hitchhike to work, do what we need to get to work for a week or two, save up enough money to buy the cheapest possible car. Then at the same time, hopefully after 2 weeks or a month, we've now landed a higher paying job. I think the goal here should be at least $50,000 a year. Ideally, we're looking at 60, 70. I would pursue software engineering jobs. If I didn't have a software engineering degree, I would literally get in and Google highest paying jobs in my area, no education required. And I would start applying for those, seeing who I knew in those fields, reaching out to friends and family, literally treating this like a full-time job. Like on my days off, you're not really off. You're now applying to high-paying positions. And high paying is relative, right? But non-minimum wage positions. So $25 an hour, ideally, or higher. Now, at that point, what I would do is I would start looking for, I would build up my emergency fund because we have a crappy car. And we don't know how long that's going to last, but 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So what does that mean? It means ideally we're buying an apartment or getting an apartment. We don't want to take a full year lease, but we can. So, find cheap rent. So 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, as small as possible, as cheap as possible. And we don't want to be there any longer than we need to. So as I'm working, as my wife is working, we are now eating every single meal at home. We're skimping by because we need a second car so we can both go do our thing. In her current role, we could theoretically get by with 1 car, but for the sake of this, we'll buy a second car. Again, it would be a junker in the beginning. So we now have 2 cars, precariously, low on that. And we are in an apartment, and we want to start building an emergency fund and saving for a house. So the emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of expenses. For this, I would say 3 months. So if we spend $1,000 a month on rent, $200 a month on car insurance, another $300 on utilities, another $500 on groceries, so let's say $2,000, we'd be trying to save $6,000. Depending on how much you're making as a household, that varies. I think within the first 2 or 3 months, ideally we're making at least $50,000, hopefully 60, 70, 80,000 annually. So from there, we would start looking to build a down payment for a small multifamily unit. So that's either a duplex, triplex, or quad. The reason we're doing this is because when we look at investments, we look at putting money in, we look at ROI. And so there's short-term ROI, like how much you're going to get in the first year, and then there's long-term ROI. So if we're able to save, say in the first year, an emergency fund of $6,000, Then in the second year, we're saving at least $10K for a down payment on one of these properties. So what you can do is you can put 3.5% down and move into one of the units, and then you can rent out the other units. So if I wasn't married, I could do this with a 5-bedroom house and just rent out to the boys. However, I'm married, so my wife and I would move into one unit and we would rent out the other units. So if you're doing this, if you're able to put like 10K down, but you're renting out 3 other units or 2 other units, then you're probably going to be making, $800, $900, $1,000 a month per unit. And what that would do is effectively generate you, say, $20,000 of income over the next year, which you can use to effectively live for free. And if you do this properly, that $10,000 you put in, you're essentially making back all within the first year, and it's also increasing that margin we talked about. So now you're earning more, and your expenses feel like they're less because people are paying your housing cost. And so this is a strategy that I actually did use in my 5-bedroom house. I rented out all the different bedrooms to people that I know, and it was great because I could invest all of that money or use that money to try new things where a lot of people are like just trying to get by. And so house hacking is a strategy. I would use it again if I was starting over tomorrow. It is super powerful. You don't need any special skills to do it. And the ROI is like unbeatable if we talk about more or less guaranteed ROI, because you don't need the stock market to go up. You don't need anything crazy. It basically just eliminates your housing cost. And if you're just starting and you want like a super quick way to financial freedom, I would recommend looking into this. So once I did this, then we have the question of, do we want to move into a house, or how do we want to start building our assets? Also, at 2 years, if we're buying beaters, we're probably going to need to start looking at new cars. And so ideally, we're earning at least $100,000 as a household at this point. I think my wife and I both have the skill set to do that. I think if you're watching this video, you probably have the skill set to earn $50,000 a year together with a spouse. And so what does that mean? It means that we're now putting, I would say, something along the lines of like the 50, 30, 20. So 50% on needs, 30% on wants, and 20% towards future things. But our cars fall into that needs category. So part of what we're saving is the cars when we need them. But we're now putting 20% of what we make at minimum. If you're house hacking, this can be higher because your needs expenses are much lower. But at minimum, we're putting 20% into like index funds. So that would be VTI, which is the Vanguard Total Index, or any of the Vanguard funds, like the S&P 500 is good. But also I would be buying Bitcoin and Ethereum because I like crypto. I don't like it as much as I like VTI because of the stability, but I like it because the returns over the last decade or so have been unparalleled, and I don't think it makes sense not to tap into that. So at this point, if I'm working a normal job, my next question is how can I push my income up? So when we look at income and expenses, theoretically your income can go up forever and your expenses have a baseline. My wife and I have pretty low expenses, so I would start looking at how I can push my income up. And if I can get into that, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year range, or even more, if I say I made the transition back into software engineering, then I would be making 6 figures, $120,000, $30,000 a year. Then I have a lot of flexibility, and so then I can look at investing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year or more, and start leveraging that money. And so then it comes a game of how do we want to invest. And so for me, I like rentals, so I would go out and look at properties because you can get properties at a bigger discount because there's a knowledge gap between the people who are buying and selling typically. Or if I didn't want to do that, I would look at index funds. And at the same time, I would start posting content. So you see me posting content right here. The way that I see this is the index funds are stable. So if you invest enough in index funds over a long period of time, you can get to $500,000 or $1 million net worth. If you've watched Dave Ramsey or Ramit Sethi or anybody, you've seen the math. If you buy rentals and you do it properly, then someone else, eventually you say you own $1 million of real estate and you've taken loans against all of it. If you have good tenants, they're paying off all your debt. And if they pay off all your debt enough and you already own $1,000 worth of stuff because you borrowed the money, then eventually you're a millionaire, right? And so one, we're putting our own money in, it's compounding, it's growing to $1 million. One, we are, buying an asset, borrowing against it, someone's paying that off, we're going to $1 million. And then the third is the moonshot, right? So these two are predictable. One is slower with less risk. One faster, more risk. One is posting content. So you see people blow up on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. And so as I'm going through and looking for deals, as I'm making investment choices, as I'm going on this journey, I'll be posting videos, TikTok, YouTube, trying to get people to see the story and hopefully be making money online that way. So this is a long shot. It might not work, but I see this as 3 different avenues. And if we're working all of them simultaneously, it gives us the greatest chance for success. This is kind of what I would do. So let's take a second and review. Shelter, transportation, bare minimum job. Then I would go try to find the highest paying job possible, get an apartment, move into house hacking, and then start investing as much as possible normally. And then after I hit, say, I think the first $100,000 is the hardest. So if you hit that $100,000 of liquidity, you've built out your emergency fund, then I think you can start transitioning into what I would say a more normal life, or like the way I'm living now. It's not as buckled down. And when you do that, then we would talk about like, okay, if we don't want to be house hacking forever, what does the next house look like? What are the long-term changes? But this is kind of the roadmap. So push your active income up, push your expenses down. And I think if you do that, then you can see that net worth span and like balloon in, I would say, 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years, maybe, easily possible to get to $500,000 net worth if you make very wise decisions. So that's what I would do if I was starting over from zero. I'm curious what you would do if you've thought about this. If you were starting all over on your financial journey today, you didn't know what was going to happen in the future, what decisions would you make? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, peace.